Welcome to another episode of the Power Law Investor. Today is the 28th of June, 2025, a Saturday. Bitcoin's above 107K and Kaspa is about 7.5 cents. Today I'm going to talk about my Power Amplitude Index, PAI. What happens when you have something like Kaspa that used to follow a power law and then stops following it? And we don't know whether it's going to continue following it, when it is, or if it's going to happen at all. How do we take investment decisions for assets that might be too young to have a statistical significant power law? That is what we're going to talk about today. It's really interesting. It's what I've been working on for the last 6 months, and I'm happy to share it with you. You've already seen a preview of it with Kaspa, but today I'm going to take the PAI and validate it against the power law, apply it to Bitcoin, and you'll see how effective it is in showing the highs and lows and good opportunities to buy. Similarly to the power law, not replacing it, but will add a certain depth of color to it, as you will see. So let's quickly go over the power law at first. You take the log of time since Genesis, and the log price, you end up with a straight line in linear regression. You then reconvert it into the linear domain, and you end up with an upward curve. This is your mathematically derived trend line following for power law following assets. In this case, Bitcoin. And if you look, the anticipated price right now should be about 118K. It's trading at 10% of a discount. And we think in a year's time, based on my particular calculations here, it's going to be about 168K. That's of course if it remains on trend, it could go significantly higher or lower. So a good return anticipated of about 60% per year. But Bitcoin is great in which it has been following this particular trend line for almost 15 years at this point, right? 5,654 days. So we have a lot of history about it. And if you look at this trend line back here and come up with the curve, you'll find that it matches very closely to what the actual price has been. So there's been a lot of statistical validity to this. There's a lot of, it really is the gold standard. And, but when you have younger assets like Caspa, for example, you have a asset that seemed to be following a power law, but then seems to have really dropped down below it, right? So anticipation is in a year's time, it's going to be trading around 63 cents. But if you look at the price right now, it's just above 7.5 cents, 7.7 cents or so. So it's significantly deviated from the power law. And in one case, we know that this is a possibility because the history is so much lower, right? It's from June 22nd, June 22. So it's been around for about 3 years or so, right? And that's not really enough. Yeah, 3 years. So it's not been really enough for it to have the same sort of validity that Bitcoin has. And then what do you do in this sort of case, right? It used to follow this nice law, use the same technique, but now it's crashed. So what do we do? Do we just forget about it? Do we just hope and pray that it's eventually going to come back? And for that reason, I developed originally through figuring out this issue with Kaspa, I developed this Power Amplitude Index for Kaspa. And that's kind of how it works. So let me show you here. And you guys have seen this before, that we're looking, here's the price of Kaspa. And what we can do is when we turn on the risk metric, we can turn on the Power Amplitude Index, you can see that it colors it according to different risks here. So it assigns it a number from 0 to 1 for every single point on the graph. And the closer it is to 0, the bluer it is. The closer it is to 1, the redder it is. Blue means it's a good time to buy, and red means it's a good time to consider selling. The bottoms are definitely stronger than the tops, because the tops are really hard to predict because the speculation can be massive, right? But basically, if you look at this graph, if you look at like, hey, whenever it goes dark blue, is that a good time to buy? And you'll find that yes, it does, especially in the recent past, right? So in this particular section over here, since when it started deviating significantly from the power law, having the ability and the discipline to buy only when it is dark blue would have been led to some fairly profitable, significant profits taking place and definitely better times to buy. It's not a flawless measure because it can't predict the future, but these are real-time values, meaning that the value here is only looking at the past. I haven't repainted it with access to knowledge about the future. So right now, for example, if you look, it says that a risk level of 0.2 is a good time to buy Kaspa. And if you look in the last week or so, this is something that I've been talking about. You can read my X post, you can watch my video, that I would start buying at the zero point 0.2 threshold. And we hit the zero point 0.3 threshold and we bounced up from that, right? So that was a good buying decision based on that particular data point. But the important thing is we want to really validate this against the gold standard of the Bitcoin power law, right? Because the Bitcoin power law here is telling us whenever it's way below the trend line is a good time to buy, and when it's way above is a good time to sell. Now, if we apply the same sort of analysis to with my particular risk metric or this power amplitude index that I'm calling, it gives us a lot of the same sort of buying points. So if you look over here, it says around 22 in 2022 November, you were looking at a price of 18,000, and that was a good time to buy, right? You can see that it has a risk metric of 0.375. So it's going into the blue section over here. And then when it gets into the yellow sections, those are better time to start getting out of it. If you look at the power law over here, again, you'll start seeing that it has similar values over here that, hey, this is a good time to buy because it had deviated way below this particular trend line. Now, the thing I want to highlight to you guys is that this is completely independent of the power law. The power law is the gold standard, and I think for Bitcoin, it gives the best overall results. But if you're looking to ride smaller trends within the big sort of ups and downs of the power law, right? Because you go up every 4 years, then you go down. So if you're looking to ride those particular waves, this power amplitude index does a pretty good job of outlining those areas. But the important thing to realize is that it works completely independently of the power law, right? So it's looking for an equilibrium state, it's figuring out the market fear and greed, it's looking at a number of other aspects and comes up with this composite value over here. And as you can see, it's doing a pretty good job, right? You can highlight certain blue areas over here. It's not perfect, right? I wouldn't only base this information on that, but it does a pretty good job of setting up, giving us a quantitative tool in which we can start making some of these decisions. You can see similar to what we got from the power law over here. You can see that when it's low, when this thing is way below the trend line, we're also seeing periods of blue over here, right? Again, the important thing to realize it is not just focused on this, but there's a big process that goes behind this, which is fairly labor intensive and it's taken a lot of time for me to figure out. But I did want to show you that this is correlated quite tightly with the same sort of results that we're getting from the power law, right? And then you come up with start thinking of where this is going to be really exciting. And in the future, I'll be applying it to new assets, relatively younger assets, assets that are not following the power law, that sort of go through this um, power amplitude index framework and give us indications of, hey, this is an asset we think has real potential. How do we figure out how to time it? When do we go in? When do we get out? So I'm very excited about this. It's something that I've been working on for the last 6 months, and you guys saw it on the Caspa version first, but it's already doing a pretty good job. But I did want to share this particular video and saying that, hey, for Bitcoin, for which we have the great indicator of the power law, it does a pretty good job of replicating that too. So I think it's pretty well validated. So, looking forward to hearing your comments and thoughts and suggestions. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notify button. And looking forward to sharing lots of great information with you guys in the next few days and weeks to come. All the best. Cheers.